So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a time when we really hope that with all of those issues bursting in your head at the moment, burning in your hearts, that we'd love you to get together into some small groups. We might break into, 5 small groups, 4 groups today. We'd love you to get together with your particular group, bounce some ideas off, and then we're going to ask somebody to be the representative and stand up and come and speak with us about what your group decided were some of the issues that needed to be addressed, or perhaps, blessing, some of the solutions that could be found, that could be practical into dealing with homelessness and all of the multifaceted reasons as to why it exists. So, can I ask you to do that? Is that okay with you? Yeah? So let's just do it. Half the room that way, half the room this way, half the room that way, half the room this way. Gather together right now and talk and debate and see what you can come up with. And then in about 10 minutes' time, then I'm going to ask you to nominate somebody to come up and talk with us.
To support those, as it is actually bricks and mortar. And even that, the bricks and mortar, it's such a complex issue. There's not one type of brick.
AOD, mental health, and then that working together.
They close.
People aren't involved in this. I'm saying it's for approval. A Parliament House wants to upgrade, and that will, I reckon, dramatic.
Well, they have generational stuff to do.
So, from this group over here, let's go first. Who was your nominated speaker? I love that point. No, you need to come up here. Yeah. Come. A little round of applause. Now, you have to start with your name. That's not the hard bit. Just so we know, just for courtesy.
Right, so I'm Jess Bailey. I'm from the Community Housing Coalition. I'm their Sector Development Officer. So our little group was in the first half up here. Francis was a brilliant leader of our discussion. So we thought that collaboration really is key. I think a lot of what we talked about in our group has already been talked about this morning, but we thought Registry Week was a brilliant example of how providers within the sector can collaborate, but we also need to collaborate with people outside of the sector, so government, bringing in DCP and Department of Housing. We thought the service provision at the moment is driven by politics rather than evidence-based practices, and innovation will not be driven by government, so that's really a responsibility of the sector. But then we also looked at how the sector can push government to developing a social housing strategy. I think a lot of the providers who were talking within our group said that a variety of affordable housing supply was really key. So we need to keep a variety of options available to address the variety of demand within the sector. But we're not doing too bad a job, and we're working on a pretty good base. So if we keep working together and working better, we've got a good shot at it.
Oh, well done. Thank you so much, Jess. That was wonderful, and the perfect length. Just a little hint to those who are coming up to knowing how passionate you are about this topic too. Okay, representative from this group who ignored me almost every single time I said you've got 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, stop now.
Hi everyone, I'm Sean. I'm the Coordinator for Community Programs at the City of Subiaco. Our little group included people from Uniting Care West, a Labor representative, some architects, local government obviously, a pastor, so we were nicely diverse, reflecting I think the sector, and I think our conversation really centred around housing and some innovative ways that housing could be more easily and better provided. So we talked about the possibility of encouraging community members to provide use their individual land to have things like granny flats, that sort of thing, and be government supported to make those available to people who are looking for accommodation. So it's moving away from a centralised model. We talked about how Fremantle is already implementing some of that, and how other local governments could potentially look at it. We talked about the potential of just saying to the state government, if public housing isn't working at the moment for community housing, then make it the community housing sector's responsibility, because they are good at it. They're the ones providing the services, and they may well be the ones who can solve the problems that government is not able to at the moment. We talked about the responsibility that we all have, and that this video from Community Housing Coalition showed excellently earlier, for educating the community, and how particularly at, for instance, a local government level, a big problem for us is that community pushback of people saying, well, we don't want homelessness near us, that NIMBYism, and our responsibility to educate people. And we talked about the huge needs we have, particularly around youth and specific needs for accommodation for people. So we haven't got any firm solutions, but we've got a few ideas, and I think it's all about getting those ideas out there, getting groups like the group we have here today to discuss them, and hopefully pulling together some of the best ones and making them happen. Thanks.
Well done, thank you. Yes, NIMBYism, it's a horrible acronym, but unfortunately it does lead to that whole, yes, we think it's a terrible thing, but just not, we don't want them in our backyard. We just don't want them around here. So what about a representative from this group up here? Lovely. This was the breakaway group. They left the room entirely to find their own space.
Consequently, we may have gone off track a little bit. I'm Vanessa, I'm from Avenue Youth in Northam. The first issue that we came up with is there was a general agreement that we cried shenanigans on the statistics for actual wait times in public housing. We don't want to get sidetracked on that, but we weren't sure where they got those figures from, because they weren't in any of our collective experience that anyone got housed, if they weren't on a priority list, in anything like 2.5 years. So just food for thought. We had some ideas in terms of... actually, I might go to the last thing first, which was the main idea was the opportunity for the private sector and private sector investment for better social outcomes. So that, again, the government, it's pretty much a reflection on what they came up with here. The government wasn't seeming to solve the problem. And some of the things that we could do to encourage that was, so moving backwards, things like local shires who have assets that are empty could make them available for social housing. Things like opening up car parks for people who might be temporarily sleeping in their cars so that they have a safe place with access to toilets and perhaps security. Although our experience with the Shire of Northam is when we suggested that, they said, but that means all the homeless people in Perth will come and live in Northam. Yeah. So that led to the demonisation of the homeless, that most people don't actually realise that your average homeless person isn't wearing a string belt and carrying a shopping cart. There's so much secondary and tertiary homelessness, especially amongst young people who might be living at home, but it's so unsafe that they're going to dash off any minute. So we need to perhaps raise awareness of what actually is homelessness. It's starting to happen when people like Verity's friend can't get accommodation. So, but they don't actually equate that to homelessness and people are working with homelessness, because they think we're all working with the rough sleepers and the people sleeping long grass, and we really aren't. The other idea as well was for the service groups, just the thing that was up on the screen. Sorry, I'm having trouble with my words today. We could all share that on Facebook. That was a really good start. Those sorts of things, a little bit more, and they don't have to be expensive because we've all got Facebook sites. Social media is overtaking traditional methods of information dissemination. So that was, I think, did I cover everything? Pretty much, yeah. Okay, so that was pretty much what we did. Thanks.
Before you go though, greater or lesser when you talked about the waiting?
Oh, much greater. Much greater. We've
That would be a much greater.
much greater.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And our last group over here, your appointed representative, although there was, I know you forgot to do that until right at the end. Anyway, we have somebody, so that's marvellous. And Barry, will we be able to get that DVD onto Facebook? I mean, how do we get that? I think so. Oh, yeah, sorry. Should I talk to somebody who knows? Not the executive officer. Yeah, okay. Lovely. It's on YouTube already. Wonderful. Lovely. Thanks, Jess. Yeah.
So my name's Rebecca, I'm from Tenancy WA. There was a few things that we spoke about. One was supporting home ground in Victoria and the innovation of community services, community sector, collaborating with the Real Estate Institute of Western Australia over here and how that would work. The other one was eliminating 3 strikes. So for all of us that work within Section 75A and 3 strikes, the issues at hand with that, and particularly women who are caught in domestic violence and the substantiated claims that are being upheld against them. So really rallying and looking at those reforms about removing that out of the Residential Tenancies Act and out of the Department of Housing policies. The other one which we spoke about was the Neighbourhood Justice Centre in Collingwood in Victoria. So I'm not too sure how many people here are from the east, how many people are familiar with the Neighbourhood Justice Centre. It's actually a magistrates court in Collingwood, but they've called it the Neighbourhood Justice Centre, so it runs like a court, very different layout to what you would see in a normal magistrates court. But what they have on the top layer, on the top level, is all the community services. So it's an integration between the Department of Justice of Victoria and also an integration with community services. So should there be any issues with someone presenting within court, it can be either stood down or referred up to a community service, and having those linkages. And the top floor is actually open plan so that those services can also work together to be able to provide the support to people that are presenting in court. So when they're facing in front of a magistrate. They also have a cafe there, which where the Neighbourhood Justice Centre is in Collingwood, directly opposite is a housing commission, and the NJC runs a cafe, and that is volunteered with men and women from across in the housing commissions. They come and run this cafe. I think it's twice a week. And what they've seen is particularly women from who are newly arrived migrants, who English may be second, third, fourth language, and breaking down exactly like Paul was talking about was that social isolation. So it is that social inclusion, and it works in another way as well in terms of people that are coming from countries where they may not have had particularly great experiences with their law enforcement or with armies or their Department of Justice, wherever. They can see that our justice service, our justice system, even though it is flawed and it isn't great, it's certainly something that you don't need to be fearful of. So it certainly breaks down that as well. So that was another possibility.
Yes, at least we have a Department of Justice. I suspect Afghanistan does not in any way, shape or form. That's fantastic, that place in Collingwood, and that also echoes the thoughts that Wayne Martin was talking about too, about when people are presenting in court, that's when we need the extra services there to be able to support those who are there and find out why they're there and what is it that they need to not be there. What an extraordinary range of ideas and passion and interest here. I know that there's so much more that you want to say. Feel free, write down all of your thoughts, share them with your colleagues. I know that one of the other problems too that Paul mentioned a little bit earlier is the awful part of it, which is those groups who have to tender to get support for your particular group. And as wonderful as your group is, it means that you become in competition with others. Instead of looking at what is the best thing for the consumer, how do we get together to do that? We have to look at, I'll be slightly better and I've got a better tenderer than you have, which makes it incredibly difficult for you in this particular sector. That said, what great passion you have. What great energy. And just walking around and hearing those ideas is so inspiring to think that maybe one day there will be, perhaps you'll never be out of work, but certainly there might be an answer. So ladies and gentlemen, we're going to finish this part of our conference here. Can I thank you on behalf of the Community Housing Coalition. Barry Doyle, did you want to say a few words to finish? Yeah, I'm only going to give you a brief time. No, but to come and do that, I know that there are some people going to the debate later, plus lunch, etc. too. But we appreciate you being here so much, so much.
I'm just conscious of the fact that I probably didn't do enough thank yous earlier on for this part of the conference. Big round of applause for Verity, first of all. She's been a stalwart in terms of making herself available for the events that we've put on both this year and in previous years for Homeless Persons Week. I would also like to acknowledge and thank the staff of Networking WA who are out there preparing the lunch, I think. And yeah, they've done a great job again. And really, I mean, I've been very fortunate as the person, as the CEO of Chukwa, to have great people working with me on this to make it happen. I'd also like to mention the staff of Chukwa itself. That video was actually created while I was on my holidays, so they did all of that. And Jessica Bailey, Michael Beard, Susan Winston, Danielle Flynn, and all of you for coming today and supporting us. And I hope that you can go and enjoy your lunch, and then as many of you as possible can come back for the debate, and we'll have a bit of a row, and hopefully it'll be constructive. All right. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, everybody. And do you know, certainly for me, one of the profound things that I heard from Jim really was finding out the story, just stopping trying to fix it, listening to what the story is. We have a guy we call Creeping Jesus who walks around Highgate, and amongst a whole range. We have quite a selection of people who don't seem to have a residence, but Creeping Jesus walks around with his hoodie. He's a long, lean character, and he has some form of Tourette's, clearly, because there's... And you can hear him coming for quite a long time. And it was quite interesting. We were outside looking at the Verge, and my partner, weirdly enough, just stopped and said, "Hello, how are you going?" And he turned around and he went, "Yeah, good, thanks." And it just left both of us speechless, because he spoke. He looked at us and spoke, and you just think, wow, there was the lesson that I should have taken on for every single day of my life. Stop, talk to somebody. I mean, he did go back to and walking up and down the street, but for a moment, there was a connection. For a moment, we were able to see there's the human being inside there, not just Creeping Jesus, a caricature who walks around. So my pledge is to stop and listen more often, which is a little bit difficult when you like to talk as much as I do. So thank you for that opportunity, everybody. Take care.